May I please have a motion to come out of executive session?
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we exit executive session at 6:27 p.m.
Is there a second? Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll take the vote. Is everybody up electronically? You need us to do it hand by hand, Jill? She got it? Okay. Motion passes 7-0. Moving on to item 3.1, Inspirational Moment, Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Mackey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This evening's inspirational moment comes from positive motivational author John Gordon, who offers the following tips for students who want to succeed in life, regardless of what their definition of success looks like. Don't seek happiness. Decide to work with passion and purpose, and happiness will find you. As happiness finds you, it will spread to others. Never stop learning and growing. If you stay humble and hungry, great things will continue to happen. Commitments are greater than goals. It is your commitments that lead you to your goals. Being a great leader requires service, sacrifice, and humility. When you continuously show appreciation, you elevate your mood, and in doing so, you elevate the people around you. Love is more powerful than hate. Love is more powerful than fear. Love is powerful. Period. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're moving on to 4.1, approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Mackey.
I move to approve the agenda of the January 11th, 2022 regular board meeting.
Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Agostini.
thank you. Periodically, I like to take the opportunity, and it's been questioned a couple of times recently, why I do not vote to support the board agenda. And I will make reference back to the February 26, 2019, item 10.6, old business action requested, board agenda. If you go on YouTube, it starts at 109:50. But at that point, when there was discussion, the board chair at that time was insistent in complying with board policy. Specifically, as the discussion went on, it was that the board chair and the superintendent only make the agenda, but they only wanted to comply with, and what we're doing is complying with part of the policy. When it was brought up, it was not supported by the board to have board members vote to get an item put on the agenda, and so we are not complying with policy by doing that. And my big point is that for item 11.1, I see no need for that to be on our agenda tonight. It's not necessary. At our last meeting, my colleague, Ms. McFadden, tried to get that changed. She did not gain support, so that is why I do not support the board agendas. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Manning?
I would like to state, also for the record, that the reason that we changed it was to give the board as a whole the ability to override the superintendent and the board chair on the agenda. So if the board as a whole chooses to have an item placed on the agenda, they can then vote to override our normal process of the board chair and superintendent setting that. So I would in fact say that rather empowers the board to be more involved in the process in a way that we've heard from multiple board members asking for that empowerment, which is why it was put in place.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Agostini?
that is a practice, and that practice that you just referred to, Mr. Manning, was not supported by the board to be put into board policy when we approved it on February 26, 2019.
Any other discussion? Okay, the motion has been moved and I believe properly seconded. I will call for the vote. Motion passes 5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Moving on to 5.1, approval of the consent agenda.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
I'm
I'm sorry.
yes.
Oh, go ahead, finish your statement.
No,
I was volunteering for the consent agenda, but I'll wait for you to finish your statement.
I'm sorry, Ms. Mack, I didn't hear what you said.
I was volunteering to move to approve the consent
you-
agenda,
I'd
but
like
I'll
a
let you finish your
point of
statement.
order on that.
I'll let you,
Okay, you were jumping the gun on me a little bit? Okay.
my apologies.
Okay, that's fine. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Mackey?
I move to approve the consent agenda for the January 11th, 2022 regular board meeting.
Is there a second? Second by Dr. Cheryl Carson Parker. Any discussion?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Agostini?
I would like the consent agenda broken up, please.
Are you making a motion?
Thank you. I move to have the consent agenda broken up.
Is there a second?
There needs to be no second on that.
I believe it does need to be a
No,
second on
if a
that.
consent agenda
It does
is
not?
asked to be
Okay.
requested to be broken up, it must be.
I don't think I understand your motion. You want this consent agenda broken up into, you want it separate and pulled out?
I want each one discussed separately. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, we have to take, this is something new, so I'm going to get clarity. Do we have to take a vote on that, Dr. Davis?
No.
I'm asking
She's
Dr.
asking
Davis.
I think the question at hand is, Madam Chair, is that you have two motions. You have the initial motion made by Mrs. Mackey. That motion was to approve the consent agenda. That motion was properly moved and then seconded. That's the motion that's on the floor. So from my understanding of Robert's Rules of Order, Parliamentary Procedure, Mrs. Agostini is correct that if she asks to have the consent agenda, pull anything out of the consent agenda, it does not require a second. The question is which motion came first. There were two motions made. You recognize Ms. Mackey first. Ms. Mackey, so that motion is the motion that is the primary motion on the floor, and you have to take that motion up. You have to take that motion up first.
Okay, thank you. So we do need to conduct.
That's
the vote.
my
So we
understanding.
do need to conduct the vote at this time on Ms. Mackey's motion, correct?
That's not true.
That is, you have two motions on the floor, where you can't address two motions at the same time. I don't believe the motion to pull the consent, to break the consent agenda up trumps the original motion which was made to vote on approve the consent agenda. You have to take the first motion. So the first motion was to approve the consent agenda. If there was no motion by Mrs. Mackey and Mrs. Agostini's motion was the first motion and her motion was to break it up, it doesn't require a second. If any board member asks for that motion to be brought up, if I am incorrect, then we can take a moment of a recess to review, to make the determination if that's the determination of the board chair. However, my understanding of Robert Rules of Order is you take the first motion that was presented, which has already been moved and properly second. You cannot undo Ms. Mackey's motion.
Okay, we are going to take your suggestion, Dr. Davis, and we're going to go ahead and do the vote on Ms. Mackey's vote to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair,
Ms. Agostini, we're going to do that first, and then I
Well,
will
you need to
recognize
have-
you after that.
you need to ask for discussion on Ms. Mackey's motion before we
I
vote on
believe I
it.
already asked for a discussion.
Well, discussion hasn't closed. You didn't ask if there's any more discussion, because I would like to discuss further.
Is there any more discussion?
Thank you. Yes, I would like to ask Ms. Mackey to remove her motion so that the consent agenda can be broken up.
I don't wish to remove the agenda. However, Ms. Agostini, if the motion fails, then you're more than happy to vote on the consent agenda items individually.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mackey. Any other,
Yes, I would like to
Ms.
say something.
McFadden?
I would just like to say that the minutes from the previous meeting are incorrect, and they need to be fixed. And I believe that there's a lot of information that is needing to be added. So if we could do that somehow, some way, I think it was suggested to do that before this meeting. So if we could find some way to do that around, the correct order of Robert's rule, I think that would be best practices.
Okay, well, I understand what you're saying, Ms. McFadden, but right now we have to deal with the motion that's on the floor. I do understand what you're saying.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Agostini?
Yes, and I have concerns as well with the previous meeting minutes, things being reported inaccurately, and then I also have questions for the CTE course. So I would like to see that the board not support the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, well, that's why we're going to take a vote. We're going to go ahead and handle Ms. Mackey's original motion. Is there any other discussion?
Yes, ma'am, there is.
Ms. McFadden?
If we approve the consent agenda and it passes, we will be unable to address the issues that we have.
We had, Ms. McFadden, we have had this for a while. Were there some things that were not given to you ahead of time that you could not have bought before we've got to this tonight, since we've had this for a while?
Yes, and it was brought, and it was done. However, the minutes are still not correct.
It was from, you said it was from what? I can't hear you.
It was brought up in an email that was sent to the board, and we asked for the correction to the previous meeting notes, or to the minutes, and they have not been updated. That's why there's a problem with going on and improving this, because the minutes are incorrect still, even though we have suggested that they be fixed. They're
Okay,
still not
Mr.
correct.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Fad. Mr. Manning?
Madam Chair, I did not see an email from a board member regarding inaccuracy within the minutes.
Yeah.
That's a board issue, and I did not see the question raised, nor a question about, as Ms. Agostini stated, the innovative CTE course, unless there was an email sent directly to you, but I'm not aware of any
I did not receive
formal
any such
request from a
email.
board member regarding either of those items, which had been sent, had they been sent ahead of time, could have been handled prior to the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. Any other discussion?
They were sent ahead of time.
Any other discussion? Let's remain in order, please. Any other discussion? Okay, at this time, we will take the vote on Ms. Mackey's original motion. We do it electronically. Motion passes 4 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain. Moving on to item number 6.1, public participation. Before we begin, I would like to remind our speakers that each person is limited to 3 minutes and that our meetings are streamed live and recorded. According to policy BEDH, comments from the public should not include gossip, defamatory words, or abusive or vulgar language. The policy also prohibits in public sessions any expression of personal complaints about individual school personnel or any other person connected with the school system. Specific students or personnel issues should be handled through the appropriate procedures as indicated in the district policy. Questions asked during public participation typically will be referred to a staff member for a response at a later time. Hand sanitizer is available for use before and after speaking. Our first speaker is going to be Joe Trapp.
That's a long walk. I almost feel like I'm accepting an Academy Award or something. I appreciate those of you that have emailed me when I've made some suggestions to the school board. And it is at the recommendation of one of the board members that I bring this to everyone's attention. I was at a Blythewood Town Hall meeting, I guess back in September, and at the board meeting was 3 representatives of the DOT, as well as the school district's Will Anderson was there, and they were addressing the town council on some updates on traffic and things being done in the community to help with traffic. And Will was there talking about the some of the school construction and the effects of that in the traffic. And the one thing I wanted to really encourage the board to do is to do some things to help the traffic situation around the school district. I know in Blythewood it's just plainly and simply unacceptable. I know there are parts of the highways that are basically shut down for, I know Muller Road Middle School, it's about a quarter mile of Blythewood Road that is unaccessible during pickup in the afternoons. And I would encourage, I would beg the school board to pass policies and authorize whatever you need to as far as acquiring property if needed, so that the administration can take the steps necessary to either use our property in a way that will accommodate all the vehicles that are there to pick up and drop off students. One of the things that was brought up at the town hall meeting in Blythewood is that the way these things are supposed to work is if you have a business, and the school is a business, you're supposed to provide room on your property for those that are there to do business with the school or the business to be off the highways. And to turn the highways into parking lots is just really unacceptable. I know, for example, DHEC, I go downtown a lot, and DHEC does a lot of testing right there at their facility, and they make perfect use of their parking lot. They're able to get all the people in to do testing, and they don't block Bull Street, they don't block Hardin Street. And I really wish that the school board would look into this, because this has been going on for years. I have a daughter I've been taking to school up until she had her license. For 10 years I took her to the schools in Blythewood, and traffic has always been an issue. The last couple of years it's been really bad. In Blythewood High School this year, there's just a lot of people that are complaining about the fact that you can't turn left out of school, and what a hassle that is for these young students and stuff to have to deal with that. And I would appreciate the board looking into that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next we have Gary Ginn.
Yes, I want to thank y'all for school board for letting us speak in public today and address y'all. And I want to thank all of y'all for what y'all do for us. Because I know as parents, we're having a hard time with our kids today because of COVID and everything else. And we understand that. But you know what? This is very frustrating to all of us especially the stuff that just went on just a minute ago. People, the chairman is not allowing the school board members to talk, and I mean, if the chairman has a problem, then the chairman
Mr. Ginn,
should,
you are out of
the
order.
chairman should
Mr.
consult
Ginn,
her
please,
attorney.
please go to your notes and speak your notes, please. Thank you.
You want me to read my notes? Okay, I will. Thank you. Why would we start this year any different than last year? You as a board are not communicating or answering public questions asked of you. You have alienated two of your own. You have put the king tyrant as a gag order on one of his employers, which is LaShonda McFadden. Fellow
No names,
board
please.
member
No names, Mr. Ginn, please.
okay, who the chairman, the jester, has refused to speak on numerous occasions. She has not also refused to let Ms. Agostini speak freely
Mr. Ginn,
and
no names,
overrunning them
please.
with personal rhetoric. The minutes of numerous board meetings have been altered where the general public and the school district cannot go back and see what really happens. Surveys and questions asked of parents have been skewed to show what you don't want to be seen. Now, how we feel about your agenda to manipulate our children and indoctrinate them in socialist system that the world that even you might not even like to live in the future. The scribe is a joke. At secretary taking minutes. Even a third grader can go back and listen to YouTube. Oh, I forgot. Every film you take, you change it up and cut it out, cut parts of it out to where we as the public can't go back and see it. Oh, that's right. That happens. You don't want the public to hear what you're doing. You put 2,000 kids in a lunchroom that's only built for 625. You're building more schools to seat kids, but I mean 625 kids, 2,000 kids in a lunchroom is ridiculous. They're sitting on the floors, eating their lunch. They all have masks off. What good does masks do if you put 2,000 kids in a lunchroom built for 625? So, you know what? That's really sanitary.
Thank you, Mr. Ginn.
Thank you.
Okay, next we will have Monica Glowinski.
Hello and Happy New Year to everybody. It's good to be here in person. To the members of the school board, all of you were elected by residents of Richland 2. We elected you to be our voice and represent parents, students, and residents of Richland 2. We did not go to the polls on election day to elect a superintendent. While I was not in attendance at the December meeting, that marathon session, I actually did watch it online, all, I think, 4.5 hours of it. And once again, I was taken aback by the tone of the meeting. In particular, I was really in disbelief to learn that an elected member of this body is being silenced and not being allowed to communicate with their employee. The superintendent is accountable to the school board, not the other way around. Furthermore, the school board is accountable to the voters of the district. You're accountable to us. I have never seen a body so adverse to having discussion and dialogue and transparency. What just happened regarding the consent agenda is embarrassing. You should have an open discussion. It's regarding the consent agenda, for Pete's sakes. That shouldn't be controversial. The residents of Richland 2, we have 3 minutes to come up here and present our case and to communicate with you all. And it's true we have the ability to email you, and I've emailed you quite a bit, and I do thank you for those who've taken the time to respond. However, I'm relying on you, elected members, to ask questions, to do your due diligence, exercise your fiduciary responsibilities at board meetings. When board members are silenced and are told they can't communicate with the superintendent, or their questions about finances are looked upon with disdain by other board members, our voices are being silenced. Our voices, the taxpayers, the residents of Richland 2. To continue to silence our voices is only going to embolden me to speak louder and to a broader audience. If you want this polarized and politicized atmosphere to stop, you have the ability to do so. Be an advocate for the students and be accountable to the residents of the district. And I would like to remind you of the oath that you were sworn to. I do solemnly swear that I am duly qualified, according to the Constitution of this state, to exercise the duties of the office to which I have been elected or appointed, and that I will, to the best of my ability, discharge the duties thereof and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the state of this state and the United States, so help me God. Remember your oath, and also remember this: the pendulum swings both ways. And I would hope that you would speak with one voice as opposed to what we've been seeing month after month after month. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we next have Larry Smalls.
Good evening. Happy New Year to all of you. For one, as a parent, I'm very disappointed by the King and the board's unwillingness to add the parental resolution to the agenda this past session. This only proves that RC2 is not interested in establishing a favorable relationship with the parents to address the various challenges of the district, but is only seeking a foolhardy and reckless agenda to sociopolitically indoctrinate our children at the expense of providing them a quality education. The first 5 words, of the district's mission statement is, in partnership with our community. Partnership in educating our kids can only be accomplished when there is agreement and trust. Can any of you honestly, I say honest, say that you have agreement with your employers, the parents? Or at least building a civil relationship which is founded on goodwill and trust? On your social media photo ops, you may smile and say, yes, we are a district on the move, but your actions are more evident by counterproductive programs and personal agendas that declare a resounding no. Actually, a district on the move backwards. How can you, okay, have a poor relationship with the parents and students of Richland County and yet claim you are an award-winning district? It's like a professional athlete trying to execute a winning play without direction from his coaches and staff, or running 100 yards to score a touchdown without having the football in hand. Worst yet, O King, I'm hearing that a discerning board member is being silenced because she is asking penetrating questions that will bring to light questionable activities that are being done behind closed doors, even getting an attorney involved to ensure keeping the matter private. What's wrong, King? Have you lost your scepter? Has she snatched your rod of power? Brother, you are 6'2". You weigh probably 230 pounds. She's 5'2", at best 140, and you're intimidated by her? What are we to think about you? This issue should be a warning to all of you. All of you. Regarding the King's power, if this board can be stifled in their ability to ask questions, do their job, what about all of you? What if you lost favor with a person in authority of power? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smalls. Next, we have Ethan L. John.
I'm not sure why the board, parents, and employees of Richland 2 are the only ones who have a say in the mask mandate for Richland 2. And not one kid gets to voice their opinion about it when it affects us the most. As I walk the halls of my high school to use the bathroom or for a quick personal mask break, I see quite a bit of kids walking around, and I ask them, why aren't you in class? and they all give me the same answer. I don't like wearing masks, it bothers me, so I just leave. So as much as I want these kids in their class, I understand why they don't like being there. I also want to talk about how disgusting and inhumane our bathrooms are. At this point, we can't even blame the students for it all. When our district and administration have taken no action to stop it, the only thing they do about it is clean it up. It is not the janitor's job to pick up after teenagers. I'm not even upset at the kids at this point when our district has failed to take the necessary precautions to handle this situation and stop it from happening. This is a complete failure of our district. And I know everyone knows about the TikTok challenges that encourage kids to vandalize their schools' bathrooms at our schools, and are very aware of this, and it is a daily thing, and continues to happen. Lastly, it's embarrassing when I have other kids come to me and talk about how a specific board member is treated and silenced. What is the board so scared of? What are you guys so scared of being said? You guys represent us, and this past school year, most of you have taught us what we don't want to be when we grow older. Our school board is nothing but bullies and criminals. Please reflect on the way you treat others, because it shows us students what we don't want. And if you still want to see on our board, start doing better. I don't know about everyone else, but I don't want bullies and criminals representing my district. I know the government likes to label people like me domestic terrorists, but all I am is a concerned kid. Just like the parents, they are concerned, not domestic terrorists. It's crazy. I feel safer here than at my high school with all of these cops. Please take my concerns and considerations and take them seriously. Have a nice night.
Okay, thank you. Last, we have Gus Philpott.
Good evening. My name is Gus Philpott. Over the weekend, I wrote out 2 minutes and 59 seconds worth of comments that I intended to read tonight. Today, I wrote out another 2 minutes and 59 seconds of comments that I intended to read tonight. And instead, I want to comment on what happened just a few minutes ago here at this board meeting, witnessed by everybody here. It's fresh in your memory. When the consent agenda was addressed, there was a motion made and it was seconded. Trustee Agostini then made a motion. Hers was a secondary motion. She said it didn't require a second. And I think I heard correctly that the superintendent agreed that Trustee Agostini's motion did not need a second. However, there was no discussion on her motion. There was no vote on her motion. And business returned to the primary motion to approve the consent agenda. Trustee McFadden correctly...
Ms. Philpott, no names, please.
I will mention her name if I want to.
Mr.
She's sitting
Philpott, you are
right
out of order.
here.
Please, no names. You know the rules. Please continue. Thank you.
Okay, would you stop the clock, please, while we have this discussion?
You're wasting your time. Go continue.
A different trustee brought up correctly that if the consent agenda was approved as stated, then the items that were to be amended or contested would not be addressed. She was exactly correct about that. Instead, business proceeded, and it should not have. For example, an item that was forgotten at the last meeting, it was on the agenda, clearly, to have a hearing on ESSER 3. I was here that night. There was no hearing. No hearing was called. When I watched the video of the meeting, business proceeded right past that item on the agenda without addressing it. However, the minutes of the meeting reflect that there was the hearing of the ESSER matter. That was a correction that needed to be made. The problem with the agenda is, the minutes, is they are boilerplate minutes that follow the agenda. So if something gets left off the agenda, it still shows up. If it doesn't happen at the meeting, it still shows up on the agenda. I ask that you observe Robert's Rules of Order. When there is a point of order or a motion made or a trustee wants attention to speak, she is entitled to it without interruption by the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Philpott. Okay, that concludes our public participation for the evening. We will now move on to 7.1 student appeals. Ms. Mackey.
Madam Chair, I will address the student appeals individually this evening. For student one, my recommendation is Blythewood Academy for the remainder of the year.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
I did, Ms. Agostini, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Ms. Mackey?
For student number two, my recommendation is Blythewood Academy.
Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, that's my motion, not
Yeah,
recommendation.
it's okay. Do we have a second? I believe that was Dr. Caution Parker. Any discussion?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you, and I just want to let the public know that I need to abstain on this vote. Basically, the way that we received the information, or for me, it was very unclear the happenings of this event and the students that were involved, so I am unable to vote on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Agostini. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, we'll take the vote on this. Motion passes 5 yes, 1 no, 1 abstain. Ms. Mackey?
For student number three, I move that the student be referred to Blythewood Academy.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Agostini. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Ms. Mackey.
For student number 4, I move that the student be referred to Blythewood Academy.
Is it seconded?
Second.
Second by Ms. Agostini. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Ms. Mackey.
With regard to student 5, my motion is to deny the appeal.
Is there a second? Second by Dr. Shore Caution Parker. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 5 yes, 2 no. Ms. Mackey.
With regard to student 6, my motion is to deny the appeal.
Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. Shore Caution Parker. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Ms. Mackey. That was all of them, correct? Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to we're at 8.1, the January 25th board meeting. Dr. Davis.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this item was added to the board agenda meeting as a request of a board member who was asking for consideration on having the January 25th board meeting moved to a later date. And so it was placed on the board agenda for consideration for moving this board item to accommodate that board member's request.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we move the January 25th meeting to a future time. I don't think we have a date. I can give one, but.
Is there a date, Dr. Davis?
The recommendation would be if the board is considering moving this item from January 25th to January 26th, keeping the regular scheduled time for the board meeing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Davis.
All
Mr.
right,
Mack?
So I would say that my motion is to move the meeting to January 26th.
Okay, is there a second?
To say something real quick, if we can move it one day past, because we have a board member that is having that already had something planned on that particular day. So instead of having it on that Wednesday, if we could be considerate and move it to that Thursday, if it's okay with everyone.
Dr. Davis?
I've not conferred with my staff to see the availability of staff to address that. This is also the scheduled board appreciation dinner that was scheduled for the board as well. We typically schedule board meetings, but we can look into that accommodation. We would have to get back to the board to assess that. I would not think it fair to commit right at this moment and say we exactly can do that, because I don't know who all have commitments for other things, and if I can get the available staff to conduct the board meetings appropriately.
Madam Chair, I'll revert back to my original statement to move the meeting to a future date.
Okay, we'll go back to the original motion. Okay, is there a second?
The motion is to move the January 25th meeting to a future date.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. McFadden. Any discussion?
Madam Chair?
Dr. Scott?
Yes. I would just like to know why we need to move the meeting so I can have a better understanding.
I'll take that one because I requested it. I requested it because we're supposed to be going to a conference, the National School Board Association, and it falls on the 25th, the day that we're supposed to come back is the 25th, and driving or flying from Washington, D.C. on that particular day to try to get here in time for the board meeting might be kind of a crunch. So I requested, that it be extended a day or so. I didn't realize that there might be other people who had something to do on that following day. So, it's not something that we have to do, but I thought I would bring it up because I noticed that I was going through my calendar that it's on the same exact day and there is a dinner for us. So I just wanted to put it out there as an option for us to think about because I didn't know how many people were actually going to Washington. So it's up to the will of the board. I'm fine with it either way, but I just wanted to let it be known that it is on the same day.
Thank you, Ms. McFadden. Dr. Scott?
Yes, Madam Chair, do you know how many board members are actually going to this conference?
Dr. Scott, no, I did not take a poll, so I do not know right off the top of my head who's attending.
Maybe if we can see if we're going to have a majority of board members here, that we can keep this date, because I know staff as well as board members plan for those Tuesdays, unless it's a circumstance that, you can't change. And I know with these conferences, I understand the importance of it because I truly love going to the conferences as well. But I was just wondering if we don't have a majority of the board attending the conference, maybe the person who is or persons who are attending the conference can come back earlier, or they can call in because you do receive credit for calling in to the board meetings as well.
I like the idea of
Wait a
calling
minute, Ms. McFadden, let me acknowledge you first, because I need to say something first, okay? Dr. Scott, I think Dr. Davis, when Ms. McFadden brought that up a while back for consideration, I think Dr. Davis went ahead and looked into moving the date, because I think that is the same day that you had our board appreciation dinner. Isn't that correct, Dr. Davis?
Yeah, I granted, what I wanted to do was give the board member an opportunity to have an item added to the agenda, so we took the precautionary measures of looking at when we could accommodate via staff, if the board should choose to pass this change, when would be the best date that we could accommodate or host a board meeting for the board, and the next available day is the 26th. So that's what we came up with in case the board passed this. But the attempt was simply to add an item to the agenda for discussion and for vote for the board in order to accommodate the request of one board member.
Okay, so, Dr. Scott, give me 1 second. So for clarity, you have already cleared it with the staff that the next day would be an open day for everybody to attend, is that correct?
The 26th is the best available day. I would have to look, if it goes beyond that, we would have to look at if there are other spaces available. Is this space rented that day? The availability of staff, because as Dr. Scott stated, we do plan for board meetings on the 2nd and the 4th Tuesday of each month. So that's the day of those things. So I already know, for example, we have to find a different caterer or a different food provider for meals, because we won't, that person will not be available.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Davis. I believe Ms. McFadden was first, Dr. Scott, and then I'll come back to you. Ms. McFadden, did you have something to say?
Oh, it seems like it's already been set for the 26th, but I was going to say that, calling in, I didn't think about that option, and Dr. Scott had just mentioned it, so I'm not sure who else going, but I think calling in would have been a good option as well. I just didn't consider that one. But it seems like the 26th was a date that's already been pre-decided for the most part, unless we go further out, so that's fine.
Okay, Dr. Scott and then Ms. Mackey.
Yes, I would just like to see if we can take a poll on who is not available on the 25th. And then if the majority is available on the 25th, instead of having the staff to have to go through all those major changes, that whoever can attend be there, and then if the others could call in if possible.
I think Dr. Davis just stated, Dr. Scott, that he already had made the accommodations available for the 26th. I think he said that isn't that what you said, Dr. Davis, that you've already cleared the 26th for that to be done?
No, ma'am.
Oh, it's not clear?
I stated that I took the precautionary measures to check when the next
okay.
available date would be in case the board changes.
Okay.
Move the 25th board meeting. The best available date for us would be the 26th.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. Okay. Ms. Mackey?
Were you finished, Dr. Scott? Okay, just a comment. I know that a lot goes into scheduling our board meetings. I know that I've gone to the NSBA conference almost every year since I've been on the board. I know that it's over on Tuesday. That's the last day. I think the last day is, visiting the Capitol and things of that nature. I'm okay. I prefer to keep the meeting on the 25th just because staff has planned. I know they've got a lot that has gone into the board appreciation dinner. However, I respect the right of the prevailing votes and will support whatever the vote is. I won't have a tantrum and have a fit and do a stump speech if I don't get my way. But my preference would be to keep it on the 25th. It's already been scheduled if there are enough board members here to constitute a majority. But I will respect the right of the majority of the board. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Caution Parker?
I'm agreeing with Dr. Scott. Why don't we see how many are going to be here Tuesday? Who are going, all the people that are going to be here and board members that will be here on the 25th. And the others could call in. But now the thing is, we have to have 5 board members for a quorum and to vote. So we got to consider that as well. And if we change it to the 26th, I don't know about anyone else, but I can't be here on the 26th. Previous commitments.
Okay.
So I just think in the best interest of everybody to see how many of us can be here on Tuesday. We'll be back from the conference on Tuesday and take it from there.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Madam
Ms.
Chair.
Agostini?
Thank you. 2 years ago, we had a discussion about changing board meetings, and I'm going to stand with my position on that we're setting precedents. And I so appreciate Ms. McFadden, her consideration of the ability now to call in and that she didn't think of that, and I'm hoping that she can do that. But I will say this, there have been 3 times in the past year that I have scheduled, or my family, we've had surgeries, and they have been planned based upon these board meetings. My husband has surgery. I didn't feel that I needed to share that with you all, but the morning of the 26th. I am not available for the remainder of the week. It happened again this past summer where he had very serious surgery, and I am tired of these meetings being changed. So I would like for us to stick with what we've done, not only for us, but for our constituents, because that's what's said in state statute, but also for our employees. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. Mr. Manning, you had a motion on the floor. What is your motion again, please restate?
The motion on the floor, and it's already been seconded, is to move it, the 25th meeting, to a future date. So I'm not specifying a date. I've asked for it to be a future date to be considered, which the staff would have to work with board members to figure out when the best time for that meeting to occur would be. Obviously, it needs to happen within the month of January. It could be prior to the 25th as well. It doesn't have to be after that meeting if staff can be prepared for that. But that's the recommendation, is to, well, I did say future date. So that's the motion that's on the table. Future date, we have till the end of January to figure that out.
And just,
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Ms. Mackey?
Just another consideration too, we've got students who are scheduled to appear at the 25th board meeting for the inspirational moment, so we'd have to check and see what their availability would be if we change it to a future date.
Is there a
Ms.
possibility?
Agostini? Ms. McFadden, please wait till I call you, please. Ms. Agostini?
Thank you. And just in terms of complying with policy BEDD, rules of order, the person who makes the motion, Mr. Manning, could actually withdraw it. If you read it, it says, "No motion will be subject to debate until it has been announced by the chairman. The mover will put the motion in writing at the request of any member. When a motion has been made and seconded, it may be withdrawn by the person making the motion at any time prior to taking the vote." Thank you.
I don't believe he asked to be removed from his vote, Ms. Agostini.
No, I'm suggesting it.
I know, but I don't think he asked that. Ms. McFadden?
So that's what I was going to say, because it seems like, there might be some conflict. Maybe we don't need to adjust it, and I'm going to put it out there because I don't know the proper protocol to go about, because I made the suggestion. But if we're able to call in, and staff is prepared on the 25th, and it seems like everything is in order on the 25th, then maybe we don't need to go to a future date. I was asking for accommodation because I was uncertain, but if we're able to call in, that is an option that I'm willing to do. So since she said that we're able to recant that and restate it a different way, then if Mr. Manning would like to do that, I'm hoping that would be a way to do that.
Dr. Caution Parker?
I'm just wondering, can we have 2 or 3 people calling in at the same time? I mean, how does all that work? Does that work? Tony, does that work? It works.
Logistically, are we capable of that?
He says we are.
Team, we are?
He says we are.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to say, Madam Chair, it may technically work, but managing a meeting with that many people on the phone, I think would be difficult. We struggle when there's 1 or 2 on the phone, and if we get into more than that, I think it's
How many people are you going?
Okay, well, let's do this. I'm gonna halt this. I'm gonna take a point of privilege for a moment. Let's just do this. Before we go any further with it, I believe it was Dr. Scott's suggestion originally. Let's see how many people would not be here for that particular day, if you do not mind saying. I will not be here. I'm going to the conference. I will be back later that evening. Ms. McFadden, who else?
I will not be here.
Mr. Manning and myself, so that's 3. Okay.
I will
So
probably make it back in time. I'm not sure, though.
I'm sure that we can. So again, let's go back to I'm gonna go back to Mr. Manning and go back to you, Mr. Manning. You had a motion on the floor. Do you want to keep the motion, or what would you like to do with the motion?
I find myself in an interesting situation. We're often said that we have board members that can't get items on the agenda. They get on the agenda, I actually make the motion to do it, and now I'm being asked to withdraw the motion and take it off the table.
It's on there for discussion.
Wait a minute,
so that
Ms. McFadden,
Yes.
remember, please, let's
be
in order.
I'm
Let's be in
trying to
order.
make a little
Thank
bit
you.
light of it, actually. I'm not.
Understand.
Yeah.
I find it
Okay.
interesting. I'll withdraw the motion. That's fine.
Okay, well, we're good. So the motion has been withdrawn, okay? Moving on to 9.1, report superintendent highlights. Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and to the members of the board, to our public that is in attendance with us live tonight, good evening. To those of you who are watching our school board meetings on live stream, good evening to you as well, and thank you for tuning in. This is the portion of the superintendent's highlights, and my highlights are organized around our 4 core values. Those values are learning, character, community, and joy. So as we kick off the second half of the school year, health and safety protocols to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in our schools remain a top priority. We are diligently working to keep schools open so that students can learn by receiving the highest quality education from face-to-face instruction. District leaders will provide more information on our efforts during the COVID update that you'll receive tonight. Now I'd like to continue with more on the core value of learning. At the last board meeting, I shared with you the names of students from Blythewood High School and Richland Northeast High School who earned academic honors from College Board's national recognition programs. Tonight, I'm pleased to share with you one additional name from Richland Northeast and the names of the students from Spring Valley High Schools receiving these honors. From R&E, we have Jamie Yu, received the National Rural and Small District Recognition Award. And at Spring Valley, receiving National Hispanic Recognition is Angela Kane. Receiving National African American recognitions are Ania Johnson, Bethany Benjamin, Chanira Godfrey, Gregory Bailey, Kaylin Felix, Lauren Keels, Paige Burvain Burke, Paige Turner, Sarah Headley, and Zaria Burleson. The College Board program helps underrepresented students stand out during the admission process and is based on the following criteria: GPA of 3.5 or higher, excelled on the PSAT, or earned a score or 3 or higher on 2 or more AP exams, and are African American, Hispanic American, or Latinx, Indigenous, and or attend school in a rural area or small town. Nominations are being accepted for the 2022 Tri-District Arts Consortium Summer Program. Middle school students who attend public schools of Lexington 1, Lexington Richland 5, and Richland 2 are eligible to participate. This year is a cause for celebration as it marks the return of TRIDAC after cancellation of the program in 2020 and 2021 due to the pandemic. We are excited to renew our mission of providing our students with an outstanding and concentrated study in the arts. The summer program will be held on the campus of Westwood High School in June and July, and the deadline for nominations is January the 18th. Applications for expanded choice magnets and Richland 2 eSchool are available online through January the 26th at richland2.org/choice. Schools are hosting in-person information sessions this month to share more information about their offerings. Check the district and school websites for details. Moving on to highlights in the area of community, our schools warmed the hearts of many, including mine, during the holiday season with their outpouring of gifts of love to so many children, families, and senior citizens. Each of the district's 5 high schools, in cooperation with elementary and middle schools, successfully held student-led, school-wide service projects designed to encourage students to explore, understand, and address the needs within the community. For their annual holiday giving project, schools collected more than 42,000 non-perishable food items, 38,000 meals, 21,000 in monetary donations, 3,800 toiletries, 1,700 books, 627 pairs of socks, 530 toys, 75 book bags, 57 scarves, 51 bikes, and 35 washcloths, 321 gift sets, games, and other requested items, 200 holiday cards, and 121 pints of bloods. Schools also sponsored 52 children and adopted a total of 68 families. These donations went to various organizations in the community, including Harvest Hope Food Bank, Rise Against Hunger, Make-A-Wish, Sister Care, Habitat for Humanity, Palmetto Animal Assistant Life Services, Wanna Buddy, Prisma Health Children's Hospital, Harmony Collections at Columbia, the American Red Cross, the Salvation Army's Angel Chief Program, and WIS-TV Families Helping Families programs. Richland 2 employees at the district office also filled holiday wishes lists for 13 families in the district. For the character portion of my report this month, Richland 2 will observe Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s holiday. I'm happy to share 2 of Dr. King's quotes on character. First is his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. He spoke about living in a nation where his children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Prior to that, as a teenager at Morehouse College, he prophetically wrote in his essay, "The Purpose of Education," that intelligence plus character is the true goal of education. In Richland 2, we emphasize character as a building block to a great education. Positive character traits are essential for students to become contributing members of a global society. Without opportunities to develop and strengthen strong character traits, learning is not complete. So as you celebrate King's Day on Monday, January the 17th, please do so with character in mind, modeling your best character traits. Remember, all schools and the district office will be closed on January the 17th, so please enjoy your holiday. And now for the joy portion of this report. Bridge Creek Elementary School's Stephen Bidwell was named South Carolina's Financial Literacy Master Teacher Program's Educator of the Month for December. The program is a statewide initiative for South Carolina's Treasurer's Office designed to increase the number of teachers incorporating personal finance education into their classrooms. Bidwell teaches students how wealth grows, how to understand the stock market, and how to take personal finance seriously at an early age to avoid financial problems as they become adults. He regularly has award-winning teams in the South Carolina stock market game. He also coaches teachers on how to use the contest in their classrooms. And Xavier Spain is the new rookie teacher of the block for January. Fresh out of college, Mr. Spain joined the faculty at Muller Road Middle School and is a sixth grade resource teacher. He decided to get a head start on his new job by starting his journey in Richland 2 in the SOARS program during the summer, teaching 7th grade ELA. Mr. Spain is part of our Premier 100 program. Welcome to the district and congratulations on his award, which is sponsored by H&R Block. And at the end of the school year, a Rookie Teacher of the Year will be selected. And our last piece of good news for Joy, Richland School District 2 has 2 school improvement councils that are being recognized for their significant efforts to foster civic engagement in public education. The SICs at Bookman Road Elementary and Joseph Kills Elementary are 2 of the 7 SICs to be named to the 2022 Honor Roll based on their Level 1 application for the Dick and Tunky Riley Award for School Improvement Council Excellence. 5 SICs will be selected to advance to the winners level in March, and the recipients of the 2022 Riley Award will be announced this spring. Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board for entertaining our superintendent highlights.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. We will now move on to 9.2, legislative issues. I believe we're going to have Dr. Davis. Is Libby here prepared to do that?
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair, members of the board. We have Ms. Libby Ruth, who is our Senior Chief Communications Officer, will share legislative updates with you and the public at this time. Ms. Ruth?
I'm going to take a point of privilege before you start, Libby. We started this legislative ad hoc committee last year to keep our public aware of legislation that affects the schools. Libby and our team and our board and select members who are on that committee have worked hard to try to keep you updated, and we're starting a new legislative session again this year. Thank you, Libby, for taking the reins on this at this time. So I just wanted to let our public know that these are important issues that can impact what goes on in your school. So thank you, Libby. You got the floor.
Thank you, Dr. Davis, and thank you, Madam Chair and honorable board members. Tonight, I have the pleasure of kicking off your legislative updates. As you recall from last year, starting January, February, through the end of the legislative session, these updates were part of your regular agenda. So now, here we are, the second regular session of the 124th South Carolina General Assembly actually convened today at 12 o'clock. Both the House and the Senate convened at that time. And so now the legislative updates are back on the agenda. A little side note with the legislative updates. Presentations are prepared the week before. So last week, I prepared these so that it could be posted on board docs by Thursday. But as we learned, lots happens between Thursday and when the board meeting is on Tuesday. And so I generally have updates and I will note them. So tonight, the presentation is a little different from what's on board docs because I updated it as late as this afternoon. And that's why it looks a little different. We'll definitely provide an updated version on board docs and get you all copies because there are links in there. So For the first update, we want to share what is expected to be addressed by the Senate and House roughly over the next 2 weeks. I learned a lot, and the committee was very patient with me, working last year with the board committee, that tracking every single bill that is related to public education was quite a mammoth task that was probably not the most effective way in trying to keep our board and our public informed about what was going on in the State House. So as district administrators were meeting to prepare for tonight's update, we suggested, at least in terms of the updates that we deliver here, we take approach of providing you with like a look ahead for roughly the next 2 weeks. So we'll do research and find out, talking with individuals who are in the State House on a daily basis, what they expect to happen over the next 2 weeks, look at different agendas and try to determine what we think will be the most pressing and important matters related to public education. So for this update, it's just looking ahead, but if for future updates, what could happen is a look back. And so did we, what expected to happen really happen? What were some of the developments? And then to continue also with another look ahead for the next 2 weeks. With that in mind, we have 3 items we're going to cover tonight. We'll start with the fiscal year 23 budget. Now, when I learned that I should mention this as one of the top things happening in the State House, I kind of scratched my head because I think we're all familiar with the process of the state budget, which is we really don't pay as much attention to it until it gets into March, maybe April, but then it sometimes carries out till June, right? Well, I've learned a little bit and found out that the House actually published a calendar already for the 2022 budget schedule, and on the presentation posted on board docs is linked to that calendar, and the House is starting subcommittee meetings as early as this week, and so we will be watching subcommittee meetings that are related to public education. A new development since I put this report together last week, you'll see, is that the Governor Henry McMaster released his executive budget. Actually was officially posted on the governor's website on Monday, and it kind of was teased a little bit, I think, with some media articles. So you may know that in it, he proposes $120 million for K-12 education funding reform by implementing key elements of the funding model that the South Carolina Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office provided to the governor, the President of the Senate, and the Speaker of the House in 2019. Very oversimplified, Libby kind of explanation is that the model aims to simplify the formula that the state uses to pay its portion for public schools. Touched base with Dr. Miley and said, what should I say next? And basically we both agreed, stay tuned. Moving on to the curriculum and instruction. The House Education and Public Works Committee is expected to take up multiple bills, some of which are listed here. These may not be inclusive as bills continue to be introduced. There are several bills in the South Carolina legislature that span the gamut from being broadly written to prohibit discriminatory action by school districts, things that Richland 2 does not do, to those that are very specific about what language and materials can and cannot be introduced or used by both staff and students in schools. Educators have concerns about these bills as they compromise the state's comprehensive process for the development of academic standards that includes input and insights of professional educators. The legislation has the potential to override standards that have gone through the South Carolina Department of Ed's consensus building standards creations process. Don't have dates yet in terms of when some of these bills or just discussion on all these bills will happen in the Education and Public Works Committee, but we will be watching for that. Third is the education scholarship accounts. There's a House version that was introduced last year, but did not make much progress. And there is a Senate version, that is actually going to be part of a committee meeting at the Senate Education Subcommittee tomorrow at 10 a.m. And a reminder, you can view those online. They are streamed live. The legislation would establish education scholarship accounts for 3 groups of students: Those in a family with a household income level at or below 200% of the federal poverty line, students that participated in the South Carolina Early Reading Development and Education Program, or who received an ECENC scholarship, which I'm going to have to research what that is. An education savings account is a deposit of public funds into government-authorized savings accounts with restrictions for multiple uses. The Senate legislation, the one that's going to be discussed tomorrow and the subcommittee meeting, is nearly identical to that House version, but that was not advanced over to the Senate side. This is an extensive piece of legislation that would have a significant impact on the funding of public education in South Carolina. The fiscal impact for the Senate version of the bill was actually just released yesterday, and haven't had a lot of time to look through the fiscal impact, and I'm going to rely on our financial experts to do most of that heavy lifting. But just to give you an idea, in the first year of the phased-in education scholarship accounts, the estimated scholarship funding is around $34.3 million, and that is money that would be taken away from school districts and transferred into education savings accounts that can be used for tuition and fees for educator service providers, for other education service providers, private schools, and other expenses that are listed in the bill. Another item of interest that's also on the agenda for tomorrow's Senate subcommittee meeting is S-946. At the time I wrote the report, they didn't have a bill number for it. They actually introduced the bill today, and it has a bill number now, and that deals with unencumbered time for teachers. Specifically, it's for K through 5, our elementary teachers, and teachers who instruct a student who is removed from the general education setting for more than 40% of the day. And this bill addresses an issue that Richland 2 administrators and school administrators have grappled with for some time and have had multiple discussions about how can we provide our teachers, especially our elementary teachers, more planning time or unencumbered lunch. And when we have these discussions, as you can imagine, one of the most common discussions kind of goes to, this will require more time, either more time in the school day, adjusting school day, more staff, which requires more financial resources. So it's definitely something that Richland 2 has already been looking at. We know that if we could figure out the best way to do this, the most effective way to do this, it would be a great recruiting tool for us. So we're definitely going to keep our eye on this bill, as well as continue to problem solve and think of ways that we might be able to do this. And then just the rest of the report that will be on board docs, there's already there, are just resources for the public as well as for the board members. We have links to the calendars as well as the meeting schedule. I linked the South Carolina School Board Legislative Advocacy document that many of us reviewed at the conference in December, and then just named our Richland County state delegation. So that concludes the legislative update for tonight.
Thank you, Libby. Any questions from the board?
Just a comment and a
comments?
question. Thank
Ms.
you.
Mackey?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for compiling the information. I know it's a lot, and it's a lot of moving parts all the time legislatively as things move, so I appreciate the update. And just to let you know that tomorrow at the Senate Education Subcommittee meeting, the South Carolina School Boards Association will be testifying as well. So we'll give updates on that regard after they've presented.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Okay, I want to just say thank you, Libby, because I looked over some of those bills that you talked about in the earlier phase, and some of them have devastating consequences if they go through. I suggest that every parent or every school board member or every school associate, teachers, you need to really look at some of these bills. Some of them have some very janky language in it, and you really need to look at it. But I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you so much, because this is a very fluid thing, and it's a lot of work, so I really appreciate you. Board, any other questions, comments?
Yes, I do.
Ms. McFadden.
So I had to take a session today for Mr. Tanner. He's supposed to be giving us instructions for when we go up there. And he said, if you have anything that your district wants to say, I think it's going to be virtual, but, you can slip them a piece of paper. And I was just wondering if those of us who are going, if there's anything that the staff, superintendent, or the board would like us to say, hey, pay attention to this. They said that whenever they have conferences and they're allowing people to come in, that's the opportunity to do that. And I actually got that today, and we watched, and they said if that's the opportunity, if we're coming up there, if we have anything we want to contribute, to let them know then. I don't think I'll be speaking, but I hear he's going, so I might have to have him. But if there's something that we as a collective would like to say for our legislators that are there, pay attention to this for Richland too.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McFadden. Okay, all right, thank you, Libby. We appreciate you. Okay, we're moving on to 9.3, the COVID update. I'm gonna take a point of privilege once again. I want to say thank you to Dr. Davis and his staff. I believe in November, we were having so many parents come in that were either for mask or against mask, and teachers who were for mask and against mask. And I kind of felt like it was important for us to see what the actual stakeholders, the people who were asking to do this, to see what they thought. Dr. Davis and I talked about it, and he agreed to do this survey that I suggested. And I appreciate you doing that, Dr. Davis, because what we want to make sure that we're doing is we want to hear everybody's concerns, not just the loud ones, but we want to hear everybody's concerns, because we are asking people to put themselves in positions that they come to work and do a job every day. And we want to make sure that they're comfortable, because let's be honest, without the stakeholders, we wouldn't be having school. So it's important to know exactly what they think. And so with that, Dr. Davis, I'm anxious to hear the results and have you present them. So I'm going to turn that over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we have a couple of individuals who will be participating in the COVID-19 coronavirus update this evening. I do know we have Mr. Will Anderson who will kick it off. I also believe we will have a report or some information being shared by Jennifer Coleman as well, and Dawn McAdams. If I'm missing anyone, Dr. Franklin, I got everybody? Thank you. To share with you, the members of the board, those who are in attendance tonight, and of course, the many that are viewing here live stream. We're ready to share this information. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Sorry about that. This sanitizer is definitely alcohol-based. If you got a paper cut in your hand, do not use sanitizer. Whew. All right, now I'm ready. Golly. So as we, as Dr. Davis mentioned earlier in the superintendent highlights, and as we will share with Dawn McAdams and Jennifer Coleman here shortly, we do continue to do all we can to provide a safe and secure environment for all of our teachers, students, staff, and others who are in our buildings. And so we have continued since the pandemic started almost 2 years ago to do all we can to provide these safe and secure environments, to work with our partners, to work with the guidance from the CDC, DHEC, and others on making sure we do the things that we can have those safe environments. So I do want to highlight a few of those things that we are doing and making an emphasis on right now. As you are aware, as our SR3 spending plan that we got approved back a couple months ago, we've been working to get these different things into our facilities. As we've learned more about this virus, it's very much an airborne virus, so we're focusing attention on getting the HEPA air filters, really spending the revenues or the part of the ESSER funding, and there's nursing room improvements to really make sure those nursing room improvements have the proper air quality like you would find in a a doctor's office or a hospital type setting, since we do have the kids that could potentially be sick going to those rooms. So we've been focusing on that, and those improvements have been ordered. The HEPA air filters for the other parts of the building have been ordered, and we're as I've mentioned in my capital improvement reports, we are seeing delays in times on getting these things in, but they have been ordered. The water bottle filling stations are also have been ordered. We've done, every school has at least one, some have more.
but we're putting more into those schools so that they're at locations that everyone has the opportunity to fill their water bottles. We're working currently on the touchless plumbing fixtures as well, working on the RFP to get those in. And we continue to update our air filters. We continue to work with our HVAC providers, our Johnson Controls provider, who actually our director of maintenance on the phone with them now, trying to work on an issue as we continue to make sure we are very efficient with our systems, and our systems are working as efficiently and as safe as possible. For example, some of our systems may not be able to handle a certain filter, but we're going to put the most efficient, the best filter we can, and then provide other impacts of opening air ducts and other things to provide that fresh air and make sure we're returning and changing that air as much as possible. So we are really focusing on making sure we do all we can to provide those safe environments. Our cleaning protocols are the same. We have increased the amount of the electrostatic sprayers. Those schools such as Dent and others that have potentially been virtual or other things, we've really hit those spaces really hard. We continue to work hard to keep our staffing at a level so our custodians can make sure they're hitting as many touch points as possible, and we continue to work with our schools. We're trying our very best. I know they're trying their best, and they're getting those spaces, and we're continuing to really make sure we're keeping those places clean. We continue to have a mask requirement, and we are working in our schools, have the process of either working through us at the district. We keep an ample supply on hand, but they also have the correct process and procedures of ordering these masks and different things correctly. Sanitizer, all the PPE, you name it, we got it. We work with our schools to either get it for them and make sure they have that. So I know there's been some cases where there's like, oh, the school's running out of masks. It's all about effective communication, so we're working to make sure all of our schools understand we have what you need. Let's just work together to make sure we get it to you in a timely manner. With that, I'll turn it over to Dawn McAdams, who will go over some of the guidelines for the isolation and quarantine. Dawn? And I'll be around for questions later.
Good evening, Dr. Holmes, Dr. Davis, and school board members. Just wanted to provide you with a little bit of an update on what's been going on in the district. I provided an update today to our risk managers and to the South Carolina COVID Grand Rounds through Prisma Health. Had about 300 physicians on the call listening to what we're doing in the schools. You able to get it up, Tony? I'm going to go ahead and start talking while he's working on the presentation. So right now, we've been going through the ever-changing guidelines with DHEC. We had guidelines that were good until December 30th. On December 30th, DHEC released guidelines based on what the CDC was saying for 5 days of isolation and 5 days of quarantine. A day later, they changed it for schools to go to 5 days of isolation and 10 days of quarantine. We got a new advisory out last Monday, and they've changed things 2 more times. So DHEC is trying to keep up with the CDC as the guidelines change, and we're trying to keep up with them. So the big changes are with isolation, which again is for someone that is sick or has symptoms of COVID. They isolate now for 5 days from the onset of symptoms, cough, shortness of breath, loss or taste or smell, or 5 days from their positive test if they were asymptomatic. So it's 5 days. They can't test out of it early by going and getting another test. When they come back, they still have to mask for another 5 days. We're fortunate in Richland too because we have a mask mandate. I don't know how other districts are managing to police students coming back from isolation and ensuring they're still masking according to the guidelines. The healthcare providers could potentially extend an employee or a student's isolation based on their health needs, but we have moved back to the 5-day isolation. You don't have to retest because you can be positive for several weeks after you've had COVID-19. Quarantine. They've changed the quarantine guidelines several times in the last 10 days. As of yesterday, quarantine has two options: 10 days with no testing requirement, which is what DHEC recommends when you are in substantial or high spread. South Carolina is in high spread now, so we're at the top of the line for COVID-19 spread. And then the other option is to come back on day 6, but you have to test after day 4 negative, and you have to attest that that child or that employee has had no symptoms while they've been in quarantine. So right now, Richland 2 is doing the 10-day quarantine. It's the safest thing for our students. As I get a little further into my presentation, you'll see some of the data. We do have high numbers. We have cases where we have had 3, 4, 5 cases in a cohort last week, and we've had to already quarantine classrooms, quarantine athletic teams. Every day, things seem to change along those lines. You can't test out of quarantine, though. You can't say, okay, I have a negative test and I'm coming back on day 2. The big change on Monday, we now have to look for household contacts. That again, that quarantine does not start until after the sick person in the family has finished isolation. So it's that person's 5 days of isolation, and then the 10 days of quarantine begin. So essentially, it's very similar to what we were having to do prior with a 14-day quarantine. It used to be up to 24 days. Next slide. Ways to avoid quarantine. Vaccination. This was another big change on the 30th. CDC changed their guidance from 2 shots of Pfizer and Moderna, you were fully vaccinated, or 1 of Janssen. CDC decided the week of New Year's that you were no longer maximally vaccinated if you did not have a booster shot. So where that impacted the schools is we had all our employees that participated in our vaccine clinics in the spring. They are no longer maximally vaccinated if they have not gone for a booster. So now if they are a close contact, they have to quarantine for 10 days. CDC has changed the interval requirements for when you're eligible for a booster this week. Boosters, you're eligible after 5 months for Pfizer and Moderna, 2 months for Janssen. So that means after those 5 months are up, you need to go get a booster to avoid future quarantine. You can also avoid quarantine if you have had COVID in the last 3 months and we have a verified positive result on hand. Children 5 to 17 are exempt from the booster requirement right now. And DHEC did release today that once you get your booster, there's no 2-week waiting period anymore like there had been. It used to be you weren't maximally vaccinated for 2 weeks or fully vaccinated with your 2 shots. So, clusters of cases. They've changed the definition more in line with other excludable diseases. So for COVID, we used to look for 3 positive cases in a cohort over a 2-week period. And then at that time, we would quarantine that group for 14 days to try and stop the spread. This week, we have moved to a 20% of the cohort is absent being positive or symptomatic, and then we can close the classroom. We need to consult with DHEC only if we have questions or concerns or it's confusing, and we send DHEC an email letting them know that we closed a classroom at X school. 5 kids out of 17 have tested positive in the last 3 days. Those are the groups that we need to send them home for 10 days and stop that spread. Next slide, please. So at-home testing is now permitted, and this has been a game changer because until now we used it for students that they were home in isolation and they stayed out for 10 days. Now they're staying out for 5 days. But we couldn't accept a home test because we didn't know the validity. We didn't know that that employee, that parent, who that test was really on. Was it really that person's test? Was it the neighbor's test? This week's release, we can accept at-home testing. There is an attestation form that the parent or employee would have to complete with the type of test they use, the brand, the lot number, the date, and everything. And that will now prevent them from having to quarantine for the next 90 days. So this can kind of be a game changer for us in these long lines where last week we've had employees that went to get tested at Bull Street and their results are lost. They're somewhere. They've been lost. They can't find the results. So we have groups of people in the Columbia area that can't get their COVID results from several clinic sites last week. So kind of by the numbers, in the past week, from last Monday till yesterday, the nurses had 2,884 parent/student encounters for people having COVID, people being in quarantine. Now, a lot of those were reporting over Christmas or as we were coming back, but we had 1,300, almost 1,380 positive cases in students last week. We had over 1,500 close contacts. 826 were in the home. 549 were outside the home. We did have 125 students that avoided quarantine because they were fully vaccinated. We had 3 that had had COVID in the last 3 months, and we had 2 international travel quarantines. Next slide. Employees. And I'm going to preface this with, we don't quite have 450 unread health emails, but we're at about 350 now. So when an employee has symptoms or is a close contact, they email health. It used to be managed by myself and 1 or 2 other nurses. I have now enlisted the assistance of 8 of our administrative assistants. I call them my candy stripers, and they've been phenomenal helping me try to get through these emails. It's time consuming. Someone will email and say, I have COVID. How can I contact you? What's your phone number? When did you test? What are your symptoms? All the information that we need to know. And it may take 4 and 5 emails to get that information. They may send it from their district email, from their personal, from their iCloud, from their university. And we've had some people that we've had 5 different email addresses, and you're trying to match up the name with the person and the situation. So it's been very daunting. And having to put out employees last week that had been vaccinated at our vaccine clinic but not boosted was very difficult for me. But the guidelines at that time were, if you're not boosted, the guidelines are still, if you are not boosted, you have to quarantine. I had a couple that were less than 2 weeks from their booster shot, which meant I had to put them in quarantine. Today, I no longer have to do that. If they get vaccinated to their booster today, they're good. So we've had a couple travel quarantines. We've had a teacher that was stuck abroad because she had tested positive before she was getting on her flight to return to the U.S., and the country she was in required a 14-day quarantine. So I'm trying to work through and get to these employees because I want to get them back to work as quickly as we can, but it takes time. Next slide. That's it. Any questions?
Board, any questions?
Madam Chair.
Ms. Agostini and then Dr. Caution Parker.
Thank you. First of all, I was one of those people that had my test lost. It took a week for me to get my results back. So it is definitely backlogged, and I was tested twice, waited 2 hours and 45 minutes once, and then also an hour and a half, and that was with an appointment because my daughter had been exposed or tested positive around Christmas time. But in terms of the employees that are no longer considered vaccinated, and this would be a question probably for Dr. Davis, but my question would be, have we thought about a site like we did in the spring so that we are a time where we can boost these teachers that are interested in getting boosted?
Actually, Maria Owens is working with MUSC. They now have a dedicated van, and they want to start partnering with us to go around to our schools so we can offer the booster shot. And it would be my hope at some time in the future we can open it up to our students 5 to 17.
Okay, terrific. And then my next comments question is, we've heard repeatedly how you, your staff, the nurses, your administrators are overworked. Is there something that we can do with our ESSER funds to get somebody in to administratively coordinate that so that you can focus on what you need to focus on and not the emails and the administrative work?
That's something that we're constantly looking at, on how we can reduce the workload for all district staff as it relates to COVID. Not only are the nurses pushed, so are the teachers, so are the administrators, so are parents, our students, our subs. And so we've been strategically looking at how we can use our funds. As you know, though, when we had our ESSER funds, initially we had to submit how we were going to use those funds to the State Department. And so we've committed a certain percentage of our funds and a certain amount of our funds to certain things already. When we did that, we had no idea that we would be coming out of Delta into Omicron, but we'll continue to monitor that. And one of the things that Mrs. McAdams just stated is eliciting other staff members who can participate in reducing the workload for the nurses as they are doing the contact tracing in our schools. But we're continuing to monitor that situation and to try to reduce the workload for as many people as we can. There are competing needs around the district for the reduction of workload.
Absolutely.
Okay,
And adding to, the nurses may be 30 or 40 emails behind in parents reporting because they're seeing the students, they're trying to catch up. Last week, I had 4 nurses out with COVID, as well as their health room assistant, and this week I have 4 nurses out with COVID and 3 on FMLA and 2 vacant positions. So if anyone knows of school nurses, we have 2 vacant positions.
Okay.
My
Dr.
final,
I'm sorry, Ms. Agostino, you want to finish? Go
one
ahead.
more question. Yes, who is on our healthcare task force?
Our health advisory team is made up of local pediatricians, infectious disease physicians. I think I have secured a new dental provider to serve. We have mental health providers on there, district cabinet and executive directors and other coordinators.
Can that
as well.
information be made public?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm working on
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That has been addressed in a previous email. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. May I speak?
Yes, Dr. Davis, go ahead.
Before we say yes to that, that has been addressed in a previous email where that information was requested by a member of the public to address individually, name the individuals who are on the superintendent's advisory. It was shared back that that was not wise at that time. Just recently today, I listened to a report from Dr. Fauci and other members who are being threatened for their position on advising administrations around the country on what protocols that should take place. I would like to keep those people protected from individuals who are personally seeking their information to possibly persuade them to do something different or advise this administration differently. So at this time, I think the most important thing is to share with the board if they would like to know the types of positions of the individuals that are there. I would even welcome board members to participate or even come to a superintendent's advisory so that they can hear firsthand what's taking place. But to share that information publicly, I think is not wise at this time for the safety of those individuals. This is becoming a very contentious and political battle, and I would not want to put those individuals in harm's way unintentionally or intentionally.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Davis. Ms. Agostino, do you have something else?
Yes, I'm not, just in regard then to Dr. Davis's comments, while I appreciate what you stated on, keeping their confidentiality, they're giving input on public policy, very important public policy. So I do question whether or not they should remain anonymous, but I will absolutely take you up on your invitation. Please let me know the next time the healthcare task force meets, and I would love to come and listen. Thank you.
That would
Okay.
be
Will do.
wonderful,
Thank you.
Ms. Agostini, because we do need a board representative. When I was working on policy ADF and our wellness policy, that is part of the new Department of Ed guidelines, that we have someone from our school board.
Okay. Dr. Shaw Caution Parker.
But I'm so loud, I feel like I don't need them. But you all, everyone is really doing a phenomenal job,
Thank you.
And all the issues and everything that keep coming about, we've never been down this road before. So no one has all the authority nor all the know-all about anything. You know, this is something we just all have to keep continuously working our way through and go with the science.
Yeah.
I had a parent that sent me an email, and I told her, it was a very timely email, I told her that you were going to be doing a presentation this evening. Now, will we find this report online so I can, when I go home, I can email her and tell her where she can look to find this report, to answer some of the questions she has?
Yeah, and Libby is getting ready to update the SMORE that went out
Okay.
on January 3rd with the updated
Okay.
information. And I'm sure you all get questions about the COVID dashboard. The COVID dashboard is driven by data that the nurses input on the cases that they work. So when you are working, seeing 40, 50 cases a day, dealing with them and the daily needs of the health room, sometimes there is a lag in getting that data entered. I have several nurses that have sent me some data today that I can just batch enter for them later this evening. So the COVID dashboard is not accurate right now.
Okay. Ms. Mackey?
First of all, thank you for the information, and I know that we talk about keeping the main thing. Keeping our students and our employees safe right now is the main thing. That is the shot and that's heard around the world, and the voices that is very important. So thank you for you and your team trying to compile this information. I know I'm super paranoid about COVID, as are millions of people in the world. I've taken like 38 tests just out here at R2i2 alone, just at that site, not including the others when I travel around groups of people that I can't avoid, all the time. And this week was probably the first time that the test results were delayed, but I got them, and I can understand why. My point in saying that is staying on top of these guidelines is daunting. I know that I've probably got, information overload from watching the news and reading and trying to stay on top of that. I commend you for trying to stay on top of these guidelines and trying to keep our students safe. And as high as our numbers are in the district, I know that they're not as high as some other places that are in the state.
Exactly.
Because we are working hard to try to keep our kids and our employees masked, trying our best to do social distancing where possible. There are times when it's simply not. So thank you for trying to stay on top of this. When I've had parents or community members who contact me who want information, it's not hard to find that information. When I refer them on to Dr. Davis or people that need to, they're responsive and they get the answers that they need. But this is a huge deal right now. This pandemic has not gone anywhere, and it's gotten worse right now.
Yeah.
So for all the measures that you're taking to try to keep our students and our employees safe, thank you. I don't take it lightly. I'm a lay person trying to stay on top of this and get tested all the time. I'm fully vaxxed, I'm fully boosted. I wear my mask as often as I'm able to. And it's still daunting and overwhelming for me and can get a little, overwhelming at times. So I simply want to say thank you. And where you need help, let us know how we can be of assistance to you. Even if it's something as simple as sharing information, with whatever your social media outlets are, or when people contact you, give them accurate information, not stoke a flame, but give people accurate information so that they can know what to do when they send their kids to school.
Exactly.
And it's just very important to share accurate information and know that we could throw rocks and bully you all day long, but I know that you are doing the absolute best you can, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. McFadden?
I'm not sure if you're the right person or not, but I do want to say thank you because I don't really understand all the different graphs or whatever, but you break it down very well. However, I was curious because students are only allowed to miss a total of 10 days of school. If they're automatically quarantined or isolated for those 5 days, first of all, how are they getting assignments? Are they able to get assignments and complete them in a timely manner, especially with testing this week? And the second thing is, they're doing the e-learning type of situation for that particular quarantine isolation? And are they getting marked absent, that kind of thing?
Very good question. When the nurse communicates with the family, because the child has tested positive in their isolation or their close contact and we quarantine, we communicate with the attendance secretary, and those students are coded that they are out basically for COVID-related reasons. So those days don't count against their 10 days. And then they sign into Google Classroom to get their assignments and reach out to their teachers for assistance.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board members? Okay, I would just like to say, I know, Don, thank you so much. This is overwhelming. I've heard from several nurses about y'all staying at work to 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, sometimes 9 o'clock at night. Then I see why when you're talking about over 450 unread email and notifications and things like that. My hat goes off. Dr. Davis is right. Everybody is overworked, but you are
Absolutely.
overworked also. And I know that y'all are kind of on the front line with this because everybody's looking at you wanting to know, what do we do? What do we do?
Exactly.
And so I'm just going to say to you, you are appreciated. Thank you so much to your staff, your nurses, and everything that y'all are doing in those schools. It means a lot, and it takes a lot of dedication above and beyond just wanting to do a job. And that's the kind of dedication that you cannot buy. So I just wanted to say to you, I've heard you, and I'm glad that we're going to try to work on ways to help do that. I'm going to, at this time, I'm going to volunteer my own services to you. I want you to call me, and I will come read some emails or do whatever you need me to do at least one day out of the week. I got you.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. At this time, we're going on to the next presenter for the COVID. Dr. Davis.
We're still wrapping up with Ms. Coleman is going to.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good evening. On Monday, December 6th, staff and parents were notified of an upcoming survey via phone call and email from the communications department. An email survey was then launched to the student's primary contact in Power School. A file with all staff email was created, and all staff members were also sent the survey. On Friday, December the 10th, a reminder call was sent to staff and parents, and the survey was resent to non-completers of the survey. On Wednesday, December 15th, a final reminder email was sent to staff and parents who did not complete the survey. Can I drive, Tony? Okay. So as Tony's pulling that up, I will go ahead and tell you that the survey was open for a total of 10 days. We needed a quick turnaround time, and we were pressed up against winter break. What you will see on the slide when it comes up is that we had a response rate from our staff of 57.8% and a response rate from our parents and our guardians of 24.1%. So the first thing everybody says is, holy cow, that's a really low parental response rate. Quite frankly, that's the national norm. 25 years ago, when I sat at USC in a survey theory class, 20% was what the research said is a typical parental response for a K-12 survey. That research has not changed. Anecdotally around the state, we've seen that go up a little bit, especially when it comes to surveys about COVID, because people are so passionate about the item. So again, it probably sounds odd for me to say I was pleased that we surpassed 20%, but we achieved 24.1%. Am I driving? Okay. All right, so very quickly, our staff results, there were 4,404 unique links were sent to our staff. 57.8 completed the survey. You can see of that percent what groups they fell into. 64.78% of our employees opened the email, and you can see then less than that answered it, but not many less. The questions were the same on the staff and the parent survey. Question 1, when all of the following conditions are met, when winter holidays are over, when cold and flu season is diminished, and when Richland County is no longer in substantial or high transmission, which of the following safety protocol measures do you believe Richland 2 should examine? This was a check all that apply question. So survey takers were allowed to check from social distancing, desk shields, face coverings in the building, face covering on buses, limited outside visitors, heightened cleaning protocols, or they did not answer. The top 3 safety protocol measures that staff wished us to re-examine once the stipulations in the question were met, the top 3 were face coverings, desk shields, and social distancing. The second question, for as long as CDC DHEC recommends masks in school settings, should Richland 2 continue to require masks? Of the staff that responded, 78% indicated that Richland 2 should continue the mask mandate as long as it is recommended by the CDC and DHEC. For the parent guardian survey results, 28,125 unique links were sent to Richland 2 parents. It was sent to the primary contact only, and this is really important to understand what that means. So my husband and I have a daughter in the district. When Communications sends out a SMORE, a newsletter with an update for parents, he and I both get that email because we are the parental contacts in Power School. However, there is always an established primary contact who is the most important number one person who should be contacted, and that's me. So for this survey, I got it, my husband did not. So why do we do that? Because we do know, as Dr. Davis stated, this is a very contentious, passionate subject. What we were doing was having one vote per child. And this is something that Richland 2 has done before. 3 years ago, when I had 3 children in the district, primary contact, I got the email, and I had one for each, a link inside the email for each of my kids. I could vote once for each of my kids. So we made sure that we limited any duplication from folks by having one unique link per student. So 24% of the parents completed the survey. Again, national average is 20 to 30, so we were really right where the research says parental survey completion is. You can see the breakdown by the level of school, and 51% of our parents opened the email. And just as a reminder, 3 survey reminders were sent via email to all staff and parents who did not complete the survey over the 10-day period. So the questions were the same for the parents. I'm not going to reread it again, but question number 1 was talking about when these conditions are met, what safety protocols would you like us to re-examine? It was a check all that apply. The top 3 from parents and guardians were face coverings, social distancing, and desk shields, very similar to the staff results. Second question was the same as for staff as well, about recommended masks in school settings being continued. And of the parents and guardians who responded, 83.6% indicated that Richland 2 should continue to require masks as long as it's recommended by the CDC and DHEC. Very close to what we saw from the staff as well with their response to this question. There was also a third question that was an open-ended item. I have read all 216 pages of them, and we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have at this time.
I have a question. Or a
Okay,
statement.
board members, I think I saw Dr. Scott's hand first, and then you, Mr. Manning. Dr. Scott?
Dr. Coleman, thank you so much for that presentation. Just a few questions. How did we communicate with those parents that may not have had an email address?
So every parent has an email address in Power School. You have to have an email address to register your student. And if a parent doesn't happen to have one, schools are very adept at helping parents create a free Gmail account. I was actually pretty surprised, based on my previous experience, that every single parent in the district had an email address in their, on their Power School primary contact.
Okay, and my second question is, I know what you mentioned about the class that you're taking, about 20%, but I was just wondering, was there a follow-up that maybe we did with the parents or could have done with teachers and parents, where if they didn't respond within 3 days that we sent a reminder to say, please follow up on the email that was sent to you?
We did that.
Okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's
Dr.
okay, and I
Scott.
was going to say, and also, did we put something like on the website to say, be on the lookout, and then schools also sent something in their newsletters? So we covered every avenue.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Manning?
Yeah, I appreciate the information, very helpful information. Thank you. Obviously overwhelming and in a direction as far as what the public wants to see, staff and our community wants to see. I also appreciate the fact that you talked about the single links to parents, so each student is represented individually because they may have different desire for their elementary, middle, and high school students. That gives them the opportunity to represent that. Also, one of the parents that came up earlier seemed to indicate that maybe there was some sort of tampering or misrepresentation of the information. Do you have any evidence that there's any tampering or
No, sir,
or
I do not.
somehow miscommunicating or trying to,
No, sir. I've had a 21-year career in education. I was in charge of this survey. I pride myself on my professional integrity. The system that we use has very clear trackings in them. There was no tampering of the survey.
Thank you. Yeah, and that was definitely not a comment to your professionalism. You are very professional, and we are proud to have you in our
Thank you, sir.
district, so thank you very much.
Okay, any other board members? Dr. Cheryl Caution Parker? Put your mic on.
Correction, Mr. Manning, we are glad to have her back.
Any other board members?
Madam Chair?
Ms. Agostini?
Thank you. In the survey that I looked at today, there was another question for other areas of consideration where people could write things in. Can you share any information, or, I mean, were there any general themes of what people said?
So I have read all 216 pages. We can conduct a qualitative coding of that. It will take a very long time, but I can just tell you from having read all of the comments, it's things such as please continue with the mask, please keep doing what you're doing, please keep safety protocols, all the way to the other extreme, please get rid of the masks. We no longer need the desk shields. We don't need to socially distance. So the comments really reflected essentially what the questions were saying. Many parents were just repeating what was in the questions.
And did you write the question? Who wrote the question number 1, when all the following conditions are met?
There was a team that wrote those questions together between operations, communications, and accountability.
Because when I look at the question and I look at the answer, somehow to me, it seems like it's a leading question. And then I have to ask, okay, so you have 51% when all these conditions are met, or the social distancing, that's what it is. But, so, if it wasn't important for all of those 3 criteria, are they saying that, okay, I'm ready to stop social distancing now? Or is it not important and I still want them to social distance after those 3 criteria are met?
So the intent of the question is, once all 3 of those criteria were met, what would you like us to re-examine? And Mrs. Roof can explain why those 3 conditions were placed on that question.
The question was worded that way because we had already communicated that the intent of the district was, after meeting with the Health Advisory Committee, was to go get through cold and flu season and see the transmission numbers come down. So we had already expressed that that was the intent, and we were looking at we're required by ESSER 3 to, when we make changes to our plan, which involves the health and safety protocols, we have to get public input. So this was, that question was to help us plan for when those conditions are met, what changes will the health and safety team go back and look at and consider. So that was a question to help us with looking ahead to the future.
Okay, and you just made me think of one final question. So the number 2 is when cold flu season, so the winter holidays are over, so check that. When cold and flu season had diminished, so does the healthcare task force let you know or let us know when they expect for that to be done?
I think Ms. McAdams walked out. She answered that question for a parent. Typically, we see the flu numbers decline end of February into March. So it would be somewhere, I think, in the March range. They would, she gets updates from DHEC. She talked about her regular calls with DHEC. That actually comes in terms of when they kind of notify the schools that we're out of cold and flu season.
So then, okay, thank you. When this is all met, then do we have a commitment from the district that they'll sit back down and look at these items and go through them?
Yes, we will meet with our Health Advisory Committee. We'll look at those items, but we are looking at those items now. It is difficult to social distance in our classrooms. As long as, for example, so we're looking at the items of social distancing or looking at the items of removing shields. It is also important for us to remember one of the reasons why we also asked the question to clarify specifically. That survey was done, that information helps guide the decisions that we make moving forward, but specifically we also want to pose to the Richland 2 community, as was stated by several of our community members, about giving parents a voice to hear what parents thought about wearing masks in schools. And so we asked specifically, we don't want to lose that point, that the question was, as long as CDC and DHEC are advising the wearing of face coverings or face masks in schools, should we continue? And the overwhelming response from our teachers as well as from our staff, our staff and our parents is yes. As long as CDC and DHEC is recommending that, recommending face masks in schools, that we should continue to follow that guidance. So we'll continue to look at that. We'll continue to monitor that. We'll continue to monitor our numbers. We'll continue to monitor whether or not we can social distance, what about face shields and all those things as cold and flu season begins to lessen or dissipate.
Okay. I wanted to piggyback on what you said, Dr. Davis. I think when we talked earlier, it was important because we, as board members, we know that this is a very hot button in the community. And we have parents who are very vocal and parents who are not. But at the end of the day, as board members, you represent the 28,000 households that are your constituents. Plus, you represent the people that work in the buildings, the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, et cetera, the teachers. So for me, when I talked to Dr. Davis about doing this survey, it was important to me that those people were also represented, because sometimes the squeaky wheel doesn't always necessarily need to get the oil, because that doesn't represent the whole picture. So I wanted to know, when I asked for this, I wanted to know what the 28,000, overwhelmingly, what was the percentage of the 28,000 households, not just a select group. And I'm glad that we did this, and I appreciate you doing this, Dr. Davis, and your team, because I know that this took a lot of work. I'm glad it can be used for your other state reports that you have to do, so it turned out handy anyway. But this was important, because this community has definitely been divided over this issue. And I think that we needed to put it to rest as to what was the thought of the community, not just a handful of people. And I wanted us to be able to look at that and be objective about that, whether it went one way or the other. And I think your survey did that, and I want to thank you for that. I am making an executive order, an executive decision. This meeting has been adjourned. Thank you.